Hello everybody, welcome to my first Last Epoch build guide. I hope you guys are trying out this game too. I am having a blast with it. I played it a bunch when it was in the beta, and now that it's fully here, this game is just awesome. So today we're going to be talking about a Warlock early game / mid game build that I'm pretty sure is going to scale into a late game powerhouse. I've done a lot of theory crafting with this setup, and I think it's going to be crazy strong in the late game. And you can see here, like in the early game, whether it's bossing or clearing trash, it is incredibly powerful. I cleared the campaign with ease, killed every boss very easy, and then I got into the monoliths already, and I'm farming those, and again, build just crushes them. It's very fast build, lots of AoE, lots of passive damage. It's just a great build. The goal of this build is to cast one spell to kill everything for each pack, but still bring enough damage to obliterate bosses. Now, the best skill to only cast once to kill a pack is got to be Fissure. This spell does so much damage, and it's not got a cooldown so you can spam it, but it is fairly mana expensive. Now, the most important part about Fissure is actually Chaotic Rupture. Chaotic Rupture is going to cause some of the spirits that the Fissure spawns to instead be Chaos Bolts, and those Chaos Bolts do a ton of damage. So you can see, whenever I cast the Fissure, it's going to cover a huge portion of the screen. The line itself is going to do a dot. It's constantly shooting out spirits, and it's also frequently shooting out Chaos Bolts. The result is just a ton of damage and a very large AoE. And these are all smart targeting, by the way. So whenever these cast, they're going to shoot directly at enemies. So this ends up being a ton of damage. This is really strong. And it gets even better when we take Change of the Betrayer, which is going to make our Chaos Bolt, instead of be like a scatter shot of a bunch of small ones, it's going to give us one massive bolt, which is going to increase the damage of this build by quite a bit. This is really strong. But if you're paying attention, you noticed my mana bar is getting absolutely annihilated. This is because the auto-casted Chaos Bolts from Fissure do cost mana. So you can see my mana bar is getting wrecked. So, how do we solve this problem? Well, Transplant is actually going to have a couple of useful nodes on it that are going to generate us mana. So not only is it our best mobility spell, but at the same time, it's also going to generate mana. This ability is extremely good, and it gets even better. But let's start with the mana. So whenever we teleport with it, we're going to explode a corpse, right? And that corpse is going to generate mana based on the number of enemies it hits. Then we can take Pale Blood, which will increase the cooldown of it, unfortunately. But it will cause it to just generate 30 mana straight up every time we cast it. That ends up being, these two things combined end up being a ton of mana. Whenever I'm in a pack, I can quickly cap up my mana pool just by blinking into the pack. That is awesome. That's really strong. On top of that, the blink is also going to automatically cast Bone Curse, right? So that we can apply our curse, and you can see we're taking a lot of curse talents. So we'll get into that in a second, but first I just want to show you the blink. So I cast this, you see my mana bar gets wrecked, and even without mobs, you can see when I blink it generates 30 essence, right? And that's quite a lot. So we're able to get a lot more mana generation because of this setup. And then we're going to be auto-casting the curse. And the curse, we're going to be taking a few super important things. The first is the Sigil of Mortality. So that's going to make it so whenever we blink, and the curse gets auto-casted, that curse is going to apply Mark for Death, which is going to reduce enemy resistances by 25%, which ends up being quite a bit of damage for us, especially because we have Resistance Shred as well. So we're actually going to be annihilating enemies' resistances, making it a lot easier to kill them. On top of that, we're going to be taking Ruptured Corpse, so that whenever we kill an enemy afflicted by Bone Curse, they're going to explode. So you can see how we're able to get out so much damage, right? So easily. We just walk up to a pack, we cast this, we blink to the next pack, we cast another one, and we just keep this ball rolling, right? And you can see that this build is incredibly fast. And a lot of it is super passive. Now we're also taking the Infernal Shade. So Infernal Shade is particularly useful against elites and bosses, partly because it's going to apply Ignite in an AoE, which is incredibly powerful, but also because of this talent in Fissure, where whenever an enemy gets hit by a spirit, while afflicted by Infernal Shade, the Infernal Shade will expire instantly, doing all of its remaining damage. And within the Shade, we're taking increased duration, right? So we end up getting Shades that last a long time, and then we expire them fast using Fissure, and we're able to quickly nuke down elites. This is going to be a lot more relevant in harder content with tankier mobs, but in easy content, you don't need to use it. So, good to know. Now, With regards to the skill tree, we're only going to be putting 20 points into Acolyte. We're going to put 8 points into Blood Aura, 8 points into Bone Aura, and 4 points into Stolen Vitality. And keep in mind, guys, like, I'm not level 100, and I assume you're not either, but there's a link to the full build in the description below where you can see the full talent tree, and you can see what order you're supposed to take stuff in. But what we're going to be talking about is kind of the priority. So, by the time you get level 20, you want to have 8 points into Blood Aura, 8 points into Bone Aura, and 4 points into Stolen Vitality. And then, coming to this tree, we're going to put 8 points into Chaos Flame for a massive damage multiplier and increased Ignite chance. So remember, we actually have quite a few sources of Ignite and quite a few sources of Damned, and keep that in mind for a synergy we're going to talk about later. Then we're going to be taking Soul Stealer. So remember, mana generation is so important in this build, right? The more mana generation we have, the more Chaos Bolts that we're going to cast. So every piece of mana generation that we can get is going to represent a ton of increased damage. On top of this, it's going to give us a chance on hit to restore mana, so this is pretty strong. Then we're going to be putting 4 points, well, actually 5 points into Hiring Armor. I've only put 4 right now because I didn't need the survivability yet, but you will want 5 points into this to proc the 5-point bonus effect. This is going to give us increased armor and health. Spirit Leech is going to give us Life Leech against all enemies, and it's going to give us double the effect against cursed enemies. So we're going to end up getting 3% Leech, which is quite a bit. Wither is an interesting talent. So basically, the reason I'm running this is going to be for the 8% damage reduction. These are where my next 2 points are going to go. But this ends up being pretty good. Like, you can take less damage, your curses do more damage, and we're applying tons of curses, and we have a lot of global multipliers for necrotic damage, right? So this ends up adding quite a bit of damage to our curses while also giving us damage reduction. Then we're going to be putting 5 points into Encroaching Darkness, so that whenever we apply a curse, we're going to automatically curse enemies again. Now, why is this so important? Well, partly because it's going to give us a little bit of AoE, but also because of the Warlock passive, where we're going to get 5% bonus damage per curse on the target. So the more curses we put on enemies, the more damage we do. So obviously, you know, free curse cast is pretty great. Okay. This trio right here is another very important piece of the build, and it's why I haven't capped these out yet, right? This is why I'm not 5 out of 5 on these yet. The damage gained from putting points into Chains of Ruin and putting points into Infernal Lash is tremendous. So we're going to get Ignite chance from this, from the flames, and then for this one we're going to get Damned chance. And then those effects are going to do bonuses whenever we get up to a certain number of stacks of those respective buffs. And those bonuses are effectively just going to be like, you know, you can think about it like a big damage pump. We don't have to get into exactly how they work. It's not really super relevant yet. But when you get into the Ashen one, whenever those effects proc, all of the enemies are going to get affected by Witchfire, which is another dot that's going to do a ton of damage. So, yeah, I mean, you can see how this works, right? Like, we go into a pack, we cast our Fissure. The Fissure is going to shoot Chaos Bolts. The Chaos Bolts are going to apply Bleed and Damned. And whenever we're blinking, right, we're also going to be applying Damned, and we're also going to be applying Bone Curse. And then everything's just going to go off, and everything's just going to start bleeding and pulsing AoE, and it's just going to get annihilated, right? And we're going to quickly go from pack to pack and rapidly clear everything. So that's... Oh, wait, we need to talk about items, actually. So items are really important, specifically for resistances. So the goal of your itemization should be to try to get 75 resistances in every category. You can see I haven't achieved that yet, but the most important one is to get resistance cap for physical. Okay, this is your highest priority. Once you get that, just try to fill them out as much as you can. And I'm talking like every piece of gear that you could possibly roll resistances, you need to get resistances. We're also going to be looking for mana generation. Like here you can see I have it on my ring. Every piece of gear that you find mana regeneration, also insanely valuable. That's going to be actually our best damage stat because mana is just that valuable for us. In terms of flat damage rolls themselves, we're going to be looking for necrotic damage or fire damage. Both of them are very good. Preference necrotic damage over fire because we do more types of necrotic than we do with fire. More of our damage is necrotic than fire, but they're pretty close, so either one is really good. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. Hopefully you like this game. Hopefully you like this build. I've been having an absolute blast with it. And I'm going to do another build guide when I get to the late game, you know, once I finish clearing the game and stuff. And I'm going to show you guys, hopefully it's going to be this build. I really think that this build is going to dominate. But I will be giving you guys a super sick late game build for Warlock once we get there. So anyway, see you guys around. Thank you for watching. Peace.